Welcome to the Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast, a podcast where we're seeking to lead change while also seeking to understand. We are also here to provide a platform for leaders to come together and unite, develop, empower other leaders in the areas of business, family, faith, and community. I'm your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by my co-host, John LeBrun, and this week we are joined by special guest, Dr. Ted Sun. Those of you that will watch and listen to this, go ahead and put those clap emojis in the comments. Those hands together, clap it up for Dr. Ted Sun. And he is here to have an incredible conversation today around the topic behaviorism. Just a little bit about Dr. Ted Sun. He is abundant in passion, integrity, and innovation. That's how many across the world have described Dr. Sun after working with him over the past 2 decades. Even before the pandemic hit the world, Dr. Sun saw the lack of systemic thought and problem prevention skills in many leaders across the world. Since no business schools were developing these key skills, he built a university focused on complex intelligence and skills development like none other in the world. Leveraging his 2 doctorate degrees, one in psychology and another in business management, along with an elite group of professors, consultants, authors, and thought leaders, he launched Transcontinental University in the U.S. to extend the work of his accredited graduate business school in Europe. As the president and chief innovations officer at Transcontinental University in Dublin, Ohio, he launched the first executive MBA in inclusive leadership in the world that addresses the current challenges in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Using his systemic perspective in organizations, Dr. Sun will reveal the numerous challenges and behaviorist approaches. And today we have Dr. Sun with us. I'm going to let Dr. Sun tell us a little bit more about himself, where he's from, and just what his university does, and a little bit more detail as we launch into this conversation. Dr. Sun?
Sure. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. And to all the viewers out there, it's an honor to be talking with you on this very important topic. So a little bit about me. I was an immigrant, came to the U.S. at the age of 10. And I've kind of worked from the slums of Brooklyn, New York, all the way to where I live now in Columbus, Ohio. Never even thought that the job of a university president was a reality at all until the last probably 10 years or so. Grew up as a mechanical engineer. That's where I got my first degree, and then pursued half of a mechanical engineering degree, and then decided to jump off and do an MBA instead. So I saw the need in the business field, because my passion was, solving engineering problems was one thing, and it's always logical, but I saw the bigger challenges with people. People was always mysterious to me, so I went and got an MBA. Once I finished the MBA, I realized it's not anywhere close to being enough. So I got my first doctorate in management, and then once I learned that, I'm like, oh, that's not enough. I got into the psychology field. So, bridging all these gaps, having a multidisciplinary approach to understanding how businesses function, how human beings go to a job and work at a job for, with all of the majority of their work hours. I've kind of realized that there's a lot of things in education that is often missing. One of the fascinating topics that I learned in my first doctorate was a course on management traps. And its specific book that the audience can easily go get is Manufacturing Employee. And it taught me about how universities were created and the purpose of university and overall the school systems as a whole in the early industrial revolution, where they needed to manufacture employees that can be controlled within the industrial machine. So people to push the buttons on the assembly line. That's the purpose of the education system. Right. And as I kind of study further and further in my second doctorate, I understood the psychological aspect of how the human brain learn and how we come to grow as human beings. And I've really got a much better understanding how university systems work as I worked in numerous different universities across the world, like University of Liverpool to, top university in China, Africa, also, Southeast Asia, as well as the US, of course. And, it led to me that the business schools and how they're approaching education, although the topics have gotten better over time with new technologies and new concepts, but how they're being taught is drastically limiting. as much time and money people spend in these programs. When you ask most graduate degrees or even business degree graduates, hey, how much do you remember? Right. So for you guys, for example, from your degrees, how much do you really remember from your degrees?
It's pretty limited. Most of it's post degree. Because most degrees are memorize and regurgitate for a test, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that entire system of regurgitation is a form of teaching you how to be controlled by someone else. Because how good you are is determined by the professors, by the test itself.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I had read something similar in a different book, and it said, and I could be wrong, but it was our education system was based off a Prussian system, which was basically not how to think, but how to do what you're told, was essentially how they outlined it. But two different things. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, conformity pretty much is the same concept, right? Your job is to say yes, sir, to the boss, whatever the boss is. So the minute you enter the school system, even at the elementary level, the teacher determines how good you are as a student. And we place so much focus on, listen to your teacher, study this, study this, study this. And the testing systems that exist in the elementary systems all the way up is crazy how much they determine your worth based on an external perspective, as opposed to understanding our own worth and our own value in our family life, in our friendships, in the community, in the church, and whatever activities we belong to. But we're still focused so much on what the school tells you as how good you are. Right, everybody tells you go get good grades, pass the SAT, ACT, and then in university, even the same thing. It's all about that hierarchical conformity system that's out there, which kind of brings back down to that whole behaviorist principles. As we're talking to the viewers about behaviorism, and let me give you a very basic understanding of behaviorism. Okay, behaviorism basically says the human being is a simple stimulus response system. So if I poke you, I'm going to get a response out of you, right? So the behavior the poking is a stimulus, and the outcome is a response. And it makes human beings very simple. If I give you a gun, you're going to shoot it. Okay. So there's not much in cognitive understanding of people. And there's so much going on in the current world right now, especially with the systemic racism, Black Lives Matter, and so forth. Everybody looks at the whole entire population and how do we get them under control, right? And many companies approach this as, let me check the box of training. I'll give you a course, you take this course and regurgitate some concepts that you theoretically understood it, even though your memory of this is going to be really short. Check the box, done. All of my employees are trained and certified in diversity and equity inclusion, right?
Now
it's
nobody's
the biggest
racist.
joke. Yeah, and it's the biggest joke. Nobody's looking at, hey, how are you, each individual at the individual level, perceiving another person?
Right.
Right? How do we see them? How do we think through stuff before the decision and the behaviors even happen? Right. So if I, in our diversity program, we teach people, say, okay, if I put a professional athlete in front of you, what's your emotional connotation? How do you see that person? If I put a beggar in front of you, right? Or if I put a janitor in front of you, what is that emotional connotation? How do you classify them? Because that's part of the functions of the brain. Our brain will categorize and reduce the amount of data we get so that we can understand what's going on and then process faster to be more efficient. But it's not efficient at all. We make all kinds of unconscious bias on a regular basis, but there's no awareness in looking at what is the perception and the thought process before behaviors happen. So as all these wonderful courses talk about, do this if you get in a situation, do that if you get this situation. It's do. Nobody says, how should you think about this? How should you perceive it? Because in the most ways, they won't even perceive that reality.
Yeah. You talked about, you laid the foundation of what behaviorism is, and you talked about the diversity. What can we do, or what can companies do, or what can we do as leaders to improve other than, as you said, just checking a box? And now everyone's trained in diversity. What are some next steps that we can put into practice that can say, hey, we can actually change the culture and actually bring a culture of diversity through these behaviorism techniques? What are some of those things that we can do to put into practice to change that?
Yeah. So now your question, unfortunately, it's a beautiful question, but the question is what we can do. It's not so much of what we can do, it's what we can design in the system, in education, or in systems of education, systems of thinking, to change how people think and see each other. Okay. So let's start off with core values. Okay. This is research I've been doing since 2006. I published my first paper with the UN conference in looking at core values. If we look at diversity, right? The worst thing to do is to say diversity is a color, a race, a demographic group. I group you into this category, therefore everybody takes on the same characteristics, right? Okay. If you're African American, you must be, Black Lives Matters, or you must be an athlete, or you must be this. Whatever the category is, and the characteristics go with category. Throw that out.
Okay.
The biggest lesson here for humanity is the actions of a few does not equate to the entire group.
That's good.
However we look at that, right? Whether it's the police, whether it's a government, whatever, the actions of a few individuals does not equate to what the group represents, right? So we go down to looking at core values. What are your top 5 values? Write them down, right? In our work with organizations, we go to the value level. Okay, so we say, hey, what are your top 5 values at the executive level, at the middle management level, at the lower levels? And get people to be more conscious of their core values. Through the values, we get them to create a much stronger relationship between people because of values, not because of we're so different and put silos in each place, right? So let's take the two of you, for example. What are your top 5 values?
Loyalty, integrity, respect, I don't know. Spirituality. I don't know what my 5th one would be. Yeah, those are basically my core values.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I would add accountability for me to that, along with several of the ones he mentioned. That's a big one of mine. Accountability, character, integrity. I like the loyalty word, but I don't know how many I just named, but
yeah.
I've never written out 5 exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. See,
I think I'm going to do that after we get done with this.
Yeah.
Well, so let me take this to the next step. Once you write this on a piece of paper, right? Then you go to your best friends. Then you go to your coworkers and people that you go to church with and you have other activities with. Ask them what they think your top 5 values are. Okay, they will be able to reflect based on your behaviors how they see you. So let's take but you both talked about integrity, right? Integrity, accountability, similar, right?
Yeah.
If you have integrity as number 1, does your best friends or your coworkers see that in you on a regular basis?
Okay.
If they don't, then you get a better understanding that you may not be behaving according to these values as much as you think you are. Right. So you get a better understanding of that. Another example here, respect. How would you define respect?
Respect for me is basically showing someone the level of how they treat others the way you want to be treated, in a simple definition for me. Not based off of exterior things, but what a person shows you, that's a level of respect that you get from me.
I've always viewed respect as 2 different things. Some people say I will be respectful to somebody, like elders and stuff like that. Tell my kids be respectful of adults. And then there's people I have respect for based on how they've lived or how they've, maybe I hold them in a high, maybe I put them on a pedestal or something based on, wow, I really respect this person based on their life actions, I guess you can say. But I mean, maybe I could be wrong there, though. I'm interested in what you had to say.
Yeah. Now, see, you both have a different view of respect, right?
Yeah.
If we take that basic rule that you talked about earlier, that golden rule respect, okay?
Right.
It says, do unto others as they would, or as you would like to be unto you, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
How many people is it exactly like you?
Very few.
Hit miss. Yeah.
Not really, right? Because you're unique. So at the basis of diversity, every human being is unique with their own set of core values.
Sure.
As their own set of offerings to the world, whatever the skill set may be, right? Now, making that assumption in your primary definition, you're assuming they're like you. Okay. So what if now people talk about the platinum rule? do unto others as they would like to be done unto them. So your focus is thinking about the other side, the other person. What do they need in the situation? How do they want to be heard? How do they want to be touched? Right? Figuratively, literally, right? What does the other side need? But that's not enough, right? That's just the behavior side. Internally, you're as a leader, you need to figure out, what do I need as a human being? So at some point, I don't lose myself. You also need to balance, what does John need? What does so-and-so need? What does the entire team may need? You have to balance everybody's needs, and showing respect is a balance between your individual need and the needs of others on your team. Okay. So there's a whole systemic thought process that comes into play. It's not as simple as whatever I want, therefore they want. Right. That's the basic assumption. That's the behaviorist principles at play. You take on those rules that everybody's passed down in generations. Like, I did a little bit of research on where the golden rule respect came from. And it's in biblical times, way back in the beginning. Right. It made sense back then because human beings, we didn't move. We were on horses. Right. At most, we go to a few cities. Like Europe never didn't even know America existed at that time. Right. Everybody was in a very isolated environment. So it's okay to think that, because it was homogenous in most characteristics, because, everybody didn't move. Now we have globalization. Everybody's moved. I mean, there's so many different cultures mixed in every single one of our genetics at the starting point. Right. Not to even count the whole family dynamics and everything else, on how we go through life in different socioeconomic classes and so forth. So the whole concept of that golden rule, but most people took it as a behaviorist approach. Let me just do what I've been told. The thought process haven't changed. So if we start shifting people in thinking and believing in a different set of rules, it becomes much more interesting, to say the least, right? Now it's my job as a leader to not assume everybody's like me, but let me go figure out what Jane needs, John needs, whoever it is in my team. Let me go figure out what they need and how to create that balance. That is what leaders should do when it comes to diversity. That's not just the starting point, right? Understanding your core values, how you define it, and each one of those values, there are certain basic assumptions, and we challenge those assumptions. We challenge how you think about respect.
Wow.
So do you find that this then helps people? One thing I've been trying to, my kids see things, as far as, we don't really watch news and stuff, but they ask questions based on what they hear and stuff like that. And what I'm trying to explain to them is, instead of worrying about everybody's differences and like a bad thing, like just because this person likes this and you don't, appreciate the differences, because often when someone has a difference from you, it can often be appreciated, and like, wow, you see this way, I see this way, let's talk about it. Or, you grew up this way, that's cool, I'm really interested into understanding that. So with your approach, would you assume, do you find then that, if it sounds to me like you're saying leaders need to start looking at, okay, what does Lafayette need, right, from me to as a leader, to, let's say we're working together to help him better thrive in his role or whatever. Do you find then that changes that thought process to, now we're more appreciating what the individual needs and the differences that they bring, versus before it's, in corporate America, when someone does things differently, thinks differently, it's kind of out of the norm or the group, it's usually kind of frowned upon. I've been there in the, corporate America, where you're a little different than maybe the group was.
Yeah. Let's kind of break that down into two separate areas. When you talk about children, one of my huge passions is bringing up children in the right way. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the common things that people do, and they tend to do this a lot in the management field, so they can't automatically adapt to children, is explain things to them. Okay. Depending on the age range of the children you're working with, especially when you get into the the teenage years, or even above 10, for example, right? They already have ideas in their head. If you keep on explaining, you're adding on behaviorist principles to them. You're telling them what to do. Okay. A different approach to that with children, and this works with adults too, ask them to go find out. Ask them about their thoughts. the key here is to develop how to open their brains to think differently, to see, okay, Lafayette's taking this example here, or doing this right now, right? What do you think's going on in his mind? What drives him to behave this way? What in his family history may have led him to this, right? Get people to see beyond their actions instead of you explaining to him. So they may go and say, okay, I have a little project from mom and dad. My job is to go figure out exactly what's in Lafayette's mind. How do I do that, right? And then spark that creativity to empower them to think for themselves. Okay.
So instead of saying, you need to look at this person this way, or you need to think of this person in this way, the way you thought was wrong, it's why don't you go and find out more about that person yourself? And then we're saying that human nature will be that they will develop that respect for that same individual. Is that what you're trying to say?
Exactly. It's the thought process you want to develop.
Yeah.
Not the idea itself. The idea will always come and go, but it's the thought process will stay, right? In the best situation, your children or people that look up to you, that you talked about respect for others, right? People you look up to, you will easily say, what would my dad do in this situation the next time he faces something? Right? What will my dad ask me to do? What will my mom ask me to do? That's the program you want to put in their children so they start thinking in a proper, healthy way that opens their eyes to reality.
That'd be so good too, because when you look at, let's say, for example, somebody does grow up in a family that maybe lacks leadership in developing their children, and as they get older, you see that reflect. Then, as a teacher, they're always you're sort of nicely telling them, what your dad said is wrong, but now you're combating what mom and dad have told them for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And they've never been able to go and create their own thoughts on their own. And now you're empowering them to find out for themselves, which goes back to the core of why we actually started our show. When Lafayette and I would have difference of opinions, we actually just talked over lunches and stuff and realized our differences of opinions are actually come from just experiences, which is fine, but we actually wanted the same or very similar results. We just saw them from different perspectives. And that's why we actually started the show, was to get those perspectives for the same reason. But anyways, that's so good.
Yeah. So the second part on the corporate side, right?
Yeah.
We talk about different ideas and innovation and so forth. In the corporations, the systemic racism is bred in such a way that we all make assumptions. So let's take the race out, right? People in marketing versus people in engineering. Imagine an engineer going to a marketing guy. Hey, I got a great idea for something. Guess what the first thought that comes out of a marketing guy's head? What's the bias there? What's the unconscious bias?
Who is it for? Who is it catered to?
You're saying the marketing guy is going, the engineer says, I got a great idea. And what's the marketing guy's first thought?
Yep.
For who?
I don't know.
Not quite. So, and I was just talking to a marketing executive Friday on this topic, right? The unconscious bias automatically comes out. You know what my idea is? How to shut you up.
Yeah, I would never know. Okay.
So, but when you look at the different functionalities within corporations, different corporations have biases towards certain sectors of what they do, right? If you look at it, finance, those guys are all making decisions based on numbers. They don't care about people, right? Unconscious bias.
It's actually true. I used to work where we hated the sales department.
Yeah, you hated the sales.
Just didn't like him. You're in sales, don't like you.
Because you're that greasy sales guy that makes me work harder. You make crazy promises to the customers and to clients to get gigs, and I can't do, right? That we don't have capabilities. That happens all the time. What do you think of HR? Everybody has their ideas about HR and how they do training, right? So even in companies, different functions have different levels. When you look at a union system, right? Many companies still have unions, manufacturing. The hierarchy of the longevity, how long you've been around, that's a huge unconscious bias, right? In high tech fields, it's what type of degrees you have. You got your degree from Harvard. Whoa, you're supposed to be this big thing out here, where in reality he's just another person, right? Who gets what degree and so forth. So there's so much unconscious bias in different places. And one of the things that we've just kind of created as a new product for our universities is what we call fearless innovation. We take every single demographic out of the equation. Okay. Imagine working in an innovation system where we train the people in such a way, and there's a technology piece to this as well. There's no names, there's no schools, there's no color, there's no race. Everything's completely gone, right? You can be, so some companies, it's a company of animals. Everybody gets an alias, okay? And you share ideas. And then based on the collection of the initial ideas, you have innovation meetings. We train the management how to do innovation meetings. So we capture the ideas and value the different thoughts, unique thoughts. And there's no company functions in these borders, right? We design the system in such a way that nobody's trapped in marketing, right? Whatever idea you have, it goes through the knowledge structure so that the best ideas win. Not the color of your skin, not your education, not where you come from. None of that matters. It's the best ideas win in this innovation system, right? So a lot of those corporate concepts, it's hard to get out of just because we're so ingrained in it, right? You talk about sales, everybody thinks, a greasy car salesman, right? You talk about whatever, engineering, like when I was in IT, way in the back in those days, it was hilarious because we would always have the user error, right? It's not a technical error that all these people are reporting, it's a user error. We blame it on the users because whatever the customers are, the users weren't doing it right? But then the tech guys have no idea what the users actually go through in their regular day lives. And sometimes we see that on Microsoft Office or whatever new software that comes out, the technical piece is there, but it doesn't fit how you want to use it, right? We see this all the time in all kinds of different things. So everybody has some type of unconscious bias. It's there, it's part of our human brain, how we operate. And the reason why it's there is because typically the human brain gets about 11 million bytes of data coming at us every single second. Imagine 11 million coming at us, right? And we'll only process a few thousand, okay? So the amount of data reduction that has to happen from all this stuff that's coming out here to very, very small amount. So we have to make general assumptions, right? Because everything has to fit into a nice container so that we can process it consciously, and some things we don't process, okay? Take that out from an innovation perspective. If you're talking about creating new ideas, completely eliminate the whole concept of it came from this person. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. There's a scientific process in place that moves the idea for the value of ideas moving forward.
So from that, is that why you started the Transcontinental University to take away, you said, the biases?
Yes.
Or can you tell us a little bit more about that, the university in of itself?
Yep, sure. So the way I've designed the university, there's so many different systemic changes. Okay. So let's start with the basic curriculum, right? In any university, the way they design the curriculum is a marketing department would design the marketing course. The finance department would design a finance course. Everybody's in their own isolated buckets, right? In the real world, everything is connected in a business sense, right? But the way they teach it, everything's segregated. So the way we've kind of gone about doing it, hey, let's take these meaningful topics, put them together. Okay, so we've taken technology and finance into a single course so that how technology and finance integrate with each other and support each other makes sense. So the whole sequence of all the courses, the students are learning systems thinking. How do these different parts that usually don't fit in here? Right, that's like step one. And it was kind of fascinating during our accreditation process when university want to get started. There's always accreditation processes, right? Yeah. So the state goes through its first level of accreditation piece. When we had a site visit, one of the site visit professors from another university basically said, "You have an MBA. Why don't you have an accounting class?" Right, accounting class. So we said, well, based on this matrix here, accounting is embedded into HR, into marketing, into every single one of these functions, because accounting is being used in all these different functions. If I teach accounting by itself, I may know how to read an accounting spreadsheet, but do I know how it integrates into that real function?
Not really.
Right? It's very limited. So the way we've designed the curriculum is very, very much integrated, putting systems thinking throughout the entire curriculum. Okay, so that's one part of the system, and we can probably go on for hours about the whole, the system of the education side. Another very basic principle: most universities use tenure professors. Right, the minute you get tenure, guess what happens?
you're invincible.
Yeah, you're invincible, right? So what's the incentive to perform, to teach,
Grow.
to make sure that you're doing your job to make the best impact on the students? Okay.
You know, some of my favorite professors were the adjunct professors when I was in college.
Yeah.
They just were. They were excited to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And as human beings, you know, if we're given a cushy job, sooner or later, the brain basically goes to mush to some extent, right? Why work so hard? Nothing's going to change. I'm going to get my 6-figure salary no matter what.
Sure.
Why should I work so hard?
Start to coast a little bit.
You may start to coast, but then you get a few individuals that's really passionate, that actually really, really care. They want to make an impact. They want to see the impact, right? So in our system, there's no tenure professors. I've created a performance management system where, you know, most companies, performance management is a 1-year kind of a cycle. In our system, it's an actual feedback before the course is over, right? Instead of all you get is a bonus in the positive side, and the only thing that matters is 2% or 4% or 10%, right? Whatever the bonus structure is in the positive side. Well, guess what? In my system, they can go the negative side. If you really don't do your job, your base will get decreased. Okay. So there's a lot of different metrics and systems to put in the system so that it works intelligently, that guides people to become the best. Okay. It is not a system where, hey, something's wrong, let me go fix it. We don't wait for the fixing part to happen. We design the system to create the best.
Ooh. That is good.
Yeah.
That is good. That's really
Thanks.
good.
Yeah.
Really
So
good.
yeah, so at
My
the end
brain
of the
is
day,
hurting from this conversation. I just want
I
you to
know.
know.
I'm just sitting here. Just listening.
Keep going.
thanks.
Yeah,
And
man.
you know, at the very basics of this, the students is at the end, right? They're coming to learn. Okay.
Yeah.
So in our system, you can't come to our school without being full-time employed at a manager level higher in our graduate program.
Wow.
Okay. Because if you come without being employed, can you apply anything? It's greatly limited.
Way less. Yeah.
Right. So no matter how great we are in teaching, if they can't apply it, your brain will forget it.
Yeah.
That's how the human brain functions. Okay. You can do all the testing and whatever happens. If you can't apply it, you'll forget it. So with full-time working students, guess what we get to do? They get to create, they're the center of the true education. So they get to bring their problems from their workplace and come. So if they're learning marketing class, they're learning leadership class, for example.
Yeah.
Right? They get to do an assessment of their own leadership within the company at whatever level they choose to, right? And then we take the theories, we help them develop an intervention to go make it better. And then they go apply it. So it's not some theoretical case study about Amazon or Walmart or this and all this theoretical stuff. And in the real world, nobody hands you a piece of paper, a problem on a piece of paper, right? Here's a case study. So here's the problem. Everything's on a piece of paper. That doesn't happen in the real world. So we're giving them real world skills of, let me go figure out what the problem is. We help you figure out how to identify the right problem, prevent it from blowing up in your face like this pandemic, right? So they're solving the problem before it blows up while in the class, being mentored and guided by faculty who are already consultants, who are helping companies across the world to do this already, right? So at the end of the day, within almost every single class, you will have solved a number of problems in your company. That's the power of education.
Wow. Does this allow them to adjust too then while fixing? Because you do a case and a case study or something. They say, well, here's the solution. Case closed. You know, all done. Got it. But when you do that in real life, you have a solution and it may be good, but there's almost always something else that happens, you know, causing, there's a whole, cause and
effect.
Effect. There we go. So you do something and something else is going to happen. You're like, ooh, I need to figure that out. I didn't think about it. So you helping them do it in the real life. Is it prolonged then? So they can now say, hey, this just came up. Now we got to figure out this situation.
Yep. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And this is what systems thinking really gets into, right? If imagine a system is always a cycle. Okay?
Yeah.
So there's like a cycle of life. Somebody dies and then the rebirth, so forth. In a systems thinking model, there's always a measurement in multiple places within the implementation of that solution, right? The measurement is often the missing part in most business strategies and so forth. I've seen all kinds of different strategies and strategic plans that have no measures in it. How do you know if it works? They have no idea. right? So in the systems thinking realm, when we do the implementation, we say, okay, if you take this action, here's what should happen. What's the measure for it? How do I know that this action created this result? And the various influences to it. And in real life, the cause and effect is too simplistic. Okay, that's another behaviorist principle. It's one cause, one effect. I poke you, you jump, right? Too simple. Okay. In human systems where there's multiple people working together, you have to look at one implementation, whatever systems does it influence, and how do different systems impose on each other. So when we do an implementation of any kind of solution, it's never one action. It's never one thing, one behavior in one department. It's okay, now, if I'm going to do this, let's say fix the leadership, right? Since we're talking about leadership here. If we want to fix leadership, how do we do that? It's not about taking them to a training or some course alone. It's about creating the environment so we get a good understanding of values as a starting point. And then we put in a system that holds them accountable to those values. And then we put in a system where we kind of help them learn and guide them through frequent feedback loops, right? And the performance management system should be able to tell the leader, hey, you're going the right way or you're going the wrong way on a regular basis, not once a year. Once a year, they've already developed all kinds of good habits and bad habits, and the bad ones will kill them, right? So the performance management system is another one that will often improve as part of the system to continue to guide them and go in the right direction.
What are some of the challenges that you see within leadership or other context of whatever that context is of leadership, with the inclusive leadership that you offer? What are some of the challenges that you see specifically?
I think the biggest challenge is that money leaders don't understand systems thinking. Okay. At the basis of it, most people talk about systemic racism, inclusive leadership, so forth. And then I ask them, what systemic process did you put in place? What inclusive process did you put in place to make the changes so people feel included? The sad part is nobody's really experienced inclusive leadership, right? Where do you get the examples from? Because everywhere you go, somebody at the top is making decisions for the rest of the people underneath them, right? There's not very many places that they've designed a knowledge structure to go alongside of the hierarchical structure. Okay, so helping leaders get a good understanding of what systems are, and then we help them design the system that's needed to create inclusion, right? So if you're talking about specific inclusion, for example, your meeting agendas, right? Who creates meeting agendas in companies?
Usually the manager, whoever's leading the meeting.
Supervisor, those who are in charge,
People in position of authority, right? Not inclusive, okay? We put a very simple inclusive process in there so that when the agenda gets created, guess what? Every single person has had input into the system. Now, when people go to meetings, hey, my idea, my concern is on that meeting agenda. My voice is heard. I have a sense of belonging.
So is this kind of when you need to bring an idea to the table kind of system? Is that how that would work?
Yep. That's part of it. Yes. But identifying problems before it happens, like a lot of times the supervisor, the managers don't know that these things are happening at the lower levels, right? Because they're not interfacing it on a regular basis, right? So the frontline people are interfacing with the customer or with the technology or with whatever they do on a regular basis. They can see the problems happening, right? So when you create an agenda, the leaders will automatically create the direction the meeting would go, right? They want to set the direction. But details of that agenda gets built by the people that's doing the work.
Okay. So it's kind of like if you're running a call center, like, hey, we're going to talk about how we are handling our customer service with such and such product. I want to know how that's operating with you. And you basically get down in the weeds and have everybody talk about their challenges within the software, the customers, things they're seeing. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, to some extent, but there's a very dangerous line that you don't want to cross.
Yeah.
So let's take the call center example. The call center example may be, hey, we want to reduce our number of calls down, decrease them, right? So that you don't have overload and the product's doing its job. How do we do that? That's the open-ended question. That's the open-ended direction that you can give. when you give that direction to the lower levels, it's not identify the challenge, but find 2 solutions for every challenge you see. You have to focus people on the positive, creative part, and then also show that you believe in them. That make sense?
Yeah.
No.
So they're bringing solutions, not just problems to a meeting.
Exactly. Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Wow. So everything that you've said, I mean, it's been a wealth of knowledge, of information that you have given. But if I was to simplify it, everything starts in the mind.
Yes.
Before we do it, you have to think it.
Yes.
Right. And when I think about that, I'm a preacher, Dr. Sun. And so there's a scripture that says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That word heart in the original text in the Hebrew is mind. So as a man thinks in his mind, so is he.
Yep.
And so that's what you've been saying this entire time, that if we can, because when I posed the question earlier, I posed it as what can we do? And you said, how can we think? That's just mind blowing to me. So if we can change the way we think, we can change the way how we act.
Yep. And I would say that's step 1, but go another deeper level.
Okay, let's go.
Right? How can we think? Before we think, how do we perceive reality in a healthy way?
Okay, how do we do that? I'm here for you.
Yeah. So this would take at least 6 months of conscious development. Okay. We will constantly put different containers in front of you, right? So I can put the word in front of you, say Africa, right? What comes to your mind right away?
I think about my people. When you say Africa immediately, I think about my people, my culture.
Right now, but so here's the fun part here. Which part of Africa? Which nation? Which tribe in which nation?
Okay, so you took me a level deeper. I don't know.
Yeah. So here's the perception, right? The perception of Africa to many Americans, it's like it's their own little country.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But have you been to Africa?
I have not.
Look at the different African countries and look at the different tribes in Africa.
Okay.
They've been fighting each other for value differences for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay? Every country has its unique principles, have its unique way of what it means to be in Ghana, to be in Nigeria, to be in Kenya, right? And within each one of those countries, the tribes in those countries have unique differences. Okay. So like take for example, Ghana. Ghana is a country that, there's a lot of Ghanaians in Columbus, Ohio. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, but when you ask them if they're from northern part of Ghana, like Ashanti, right? The Ashanti Ghanaians are usually a little bit taller. Their cultural values are a little bit different versus the ones from the southern part of Ghana, like in Accra, which is the capital. Okay. Yeah. And even the foods they eat is different. Okay. So how they think, how they behave, there's conflicts between northern and southern tribes in Ghana, right? So getting a good understanding of the tribal level is where you need to go, not assumption of all of Africa, right? And the same thing container happens in Europe, right? When we think of what does it mean to be European? Well, guess what? Those guys fought for centuries and centuries and centuries. Right, versus the Romans, versus the Brits, and Estonia, and this and that. I mean, they fought constantly, right? What do you think of Asians, right? Yeah. We have this whole challenge right now in the U.S. about the whole Asian hate issues, right? But they take that container of Asia and then say, "Oh, they're all Asians." Yeah. Well, you know how different they are, right? They're drastically different. Or even put the container of Americans, right? What's an American?
Oh my goodness.
Right. We're not that simple, but the Europeans make that assumptions on a regular basis. If you're American, you're self-centered, egotistical, you think on the world and you behave in certain ways. A lot of people treat Americans that way until you get to go there and show them that you are you and you're different and you're another human being.
Wow.
Okay. So how we perceive reality is the first step. Perception is that data that we see. And then the thought process come after that, and then the behaviors.
That's good. That's really good. Is there anything else that you wanted to provide our audience on the topic of behaviorism, or anything that has to do around that? Or something that you wanted to talk about, Dr. Sun? I just enjoy talking to you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, the thing that kind of gets me a little bit upset is I see so many companies out there taking people's good money and giving certificates left and right. And at the end of the day, people have walls of certificates that they don't really know what the concept's really about. Right. So for everybody out there that's looking to upskill, it's a huge concept right now. Everybody's doing some type of upskilling or reskilling or whatever you want to call it. Be careful of all the courses you're taking out there. Right. There's a lot of courses out there that give you a lot of information. The information is maybe good information. Okay. But you may not learn it based on their methodology. Okay. Take learning into your own responsibility as an individual. Don't expect the company or some other external source to do it, because most of them don't know. It's not profitable. Right.
Sure.
I can give you all kinds of stuff. I can replicate it. I can give you I can create one single course and sell 1 million copies, make a ton of money with it. Am I really changing people? But the consumer has to say, okay, you're not here to help me learn. I'm responsible for that. I'm not going to simply do what these behaviors you're saying I should do as a good leader, or as emotional intelligent leader, or as this, as that. It's not about behaviors. I need to take a step back and say, okay, if I want to learn this, I need to figure out, how do I see reality differently? How do I think through this? And then how should I behave? And then once you figure the how you behave part based on your core values and your environment, the people around you, then you put it into a learning system where you can say, okay, every week I will apply this new action that helps me think differently, and then put a system to measure the outcome of that action. That's when you really truly learn, but it has to be individual responsibility.
Sure.
That's when you become an extremely powerful learner and a leader.
Wow. John, did you have any other questions for Dr. Sun?
No. Dr. Sun, you do also, I think we're kind of wrapping up a little bit. Your university also does consulting with companies to help guide on and putting in these practices and ways of helping employees learn how to think and so forth, as we've been talking about. Is that true?
Yes. Yep.
Did you want to talk any on that as we wrap up?
Sure. So to me, the consulting world is often somewhat of a challenge, because consultants have some great ideas and they give it to a company, an executive, right? It's in a binder.
Yeah.
Great ideas. And then the company executive looks at it, what do I do with this?
No
How
implementation.
Do I
Yeah.
How do I, oftentimes it's on the behavior side. Okay. So when we look at consulting, consulting education should be very much tied together, right? If I have a great idea, I can give it to you from an intellectual property perspective. I still need to go and develop the people underneath that so that they can apply it and create a system where this gets better and better and better at every iteration. If you have to bring a consultant back multiple years, then there's an ethical challenge there, right? I always have fun with people that are coaches or executives or consultants. How many years have you had those clients? The minute they go over 2 years for having a client, then there's an ethical challenge to my understanding of what we should do for companies. We should empower them to give them a system so that they can perpetually grow and be perpetually better and better and better over time. Not, hey, I always need you. Let me call the consultant to fix this problem, or let me call the consultant to fix that problem. The constant perpetual need to call somebody. No codependence in my world. Right? So the consulting and education is really very much tied together. Even in the education side of things, in the academic programs, we help people solve their problems while they're going through an MBA or a PhD. On the consulting side, we add a lot more by saying, here's another system. Here's a fearless innovation system that eliminates unconscious bias, that guarantees inclusion in every aspect of creating new ideas. That's intellectual property. So we do that on the consulting side, as well as provide the educational support to make sure people can run those systems.
I love that fearless innovation idea. You know how companies listening, you know how much innovation your company could have over a 12-month period if this was really part of the culture in the company, where everybody comes up with solutions to problems and they're all brought to the table. Because people have such great ideas, but most people are afraid to speak up. And I think part of that is because we were raised in school where if you said something wrong or made a mistake on something, you got a big red mark, right? I always tell my kids, like, quit being so afraid to fail. It's okay. I don't care. Like, you're going to fail. If you're not failing, you're not learning. Like, failing is a part of growing. The problem is the school teaches us that failing means, you've been bad and you have to do it again, but why is doing something again a bad thing necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I mean, perpetually having to do it over and over means you're not learning the proper things, but there's nothing wrong with having a setback. That's called business. It's called life. Anyways.
Right. Yeah. And the beauty of this, once we implement this, it's not a 12-month journey.
Yeah.
It's a 3 to 6 months journey. Okay. I have clients that's done this, and within the first 2 months, they take their zero number of ideas. Like one of the metrics we have is ideas per employee.
Okay.
Right? Before we engage with them, they had zero. They never measured it. They had no idea. And then they were complaining about having no innovative solutions or no innovation in their company. Right. Mm-hmm. We engaged with them. By the second month, we were at 1.25 ideas per employee.
Mm.
Okay. So depending on the implementation piece, 3 to 6 months, we can get them there. It's not a whole year. When you think systemically and holistically to change many of the environmental variables, you can make it happen.
That is incredible. And this has been an incredible conversation. Those of you that will watch and listen to this episode, we want you to not just watch and listen to what Dr. Ted has said on this episode, but we want you to follow him on his various social media pages there, on his LinkedIn page, Dr. Ted Sun, and on Facebook, Dr. Ted Sun. Are those the two main places that they can follow you on, Dr. Ted?
Yeah. Also the university website where I publish many articles and different resources for leaders.
Absolutely. And as always, we want you to follow Unscripted on our various social media platforms. There on our Facebook page. You can watch this episode. You can see clips from this episode there on Unscripted Authentic Leadership. Also on our Instagram page at Unscripted Leadership. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Unscripted Authentic Leadership, on our YouTube channel. Subscribe there. Unscripted Authentic Leadership. Those of you that may not watch this episode, but you will listen to this, you can do that by going to our various streaming platforms. We are on all podcast platforms, from Apple Podcasts to Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeart Radio, Stitcher, and so much more. Wherever you can find podcasts, you can stream that on any platform. You can also connect with us on our website, unscripted-leadership.com. And our read of the month this week is "If Experience is Such a Good Teacher, Why Do I Keep Repeating the Course?" J. Ellsworth Callis. That is our read of the month. This has been another incredible episode here on the Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. Again, we say thank you to our special guest, Dr. Ted Sun, for all the fire, the knowledge that he dropped, and the wisdom that we can go back and take with us to be better leaders. And we are thankful for that. As always, we are here to build bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. Until next time, we pray you be the leader that God has called you to be.